In this tutorial, we're going to use planar mapping to put a door texture on the geometry that represents our door. I'm going to start by selecting the polygon, and I'm going to right click on it, and I'm going to choose Assign New Material. I'm going to choose Arnold, and then from the Arnold menu, AI Standard Surface. The attributes will appear on the right hand side. I'm going to name it, and then I'm going to go down to the Base tab and to the word Color. At the far right hand side of the slider bar for the color, there's a checkerboard. I'm going to click on that small checkerboard icon, and I'm going to see the Create Render node pop up. I'm going to choose Checker. If I don't see the checkerboard pattern, I'll hit 6 on the keyboard so that I see my textures. I'm going to W to get the Move tool. I'm looking for the axis that is perpendicular to the front of the door. In this instance, it is the blue Z-axis. So it's the axis that's perpendicular to the surface that you wish the texture to reside on. I'm going to select the geometry with the checkerboard pattern now, and I'll hold down the space bar. I'm going to go to UV in the hotbox, and I'm going to choose Planar. And I'm going to go to the attributes by clicking on the white box. I'm going to set the axis in the planar mapping options to Z. And I'm going to click on Apply. I am now going to go to the Channels window on the right. If you don't see the Channels window on the right, you can get to it by clicking on the 3 white polygon panels directly below the lock in the upper right hand corner of the interface. When I do so, I see the attributes for the selected door. Toward the bottom, you'll see 2 terms, projected width, projected height. Those both numbers should be equal. So I'm going to select them, and I'm going to make each of them 4. And when I do so, 2 things will happen. The checkerboard will now be perfectly square, and you'll also see a virtual selection box that is smaller than the actual door itself. I'm going to right click on the geometry and go back to my object mode. Now I'm going to go up to my dock, and I'm looking for the UV editor button. The UV editor button is a little green box with a checkerboard in it. You can see the relationship between that checkerboard pattern on the door and the icon on the dock. If it does not appear on your dock, you can add it by holding down Command and Shift, and you can go to UV at the top of the user interface, and then you can choose UV Editor. With the geometry select, I'm going to click on that icon on my dock. And when I do so, I'm going to see the UV map, which is this white line that you see now, over the checkerboard pattern in the UV dock. Now, everything in the UV editor, any element that Photoshop will be textured with, has to appear inside this checkerboard. So what it means is we've got to scale this UV map of our door proportionally down inside of that checkerboard. I'm going to right click and I'm going to choose UV Shell. And when I roll my cursor a bit, I'll see a red skin on the inside. If I click on it, it turns green. This allows me to use my regular transform tools to scale, to move, and to rotate. I simply want to scale this to fit inside, so I'll hit R, and with the middle yellow box, I'll click and drag to the left and scale that UV map inside of the checkerboard. I'm going to go to my viewport, right click on my geometry and choose object mode and select it again. With the UV map inside the checkerboard pattern and my geometry selected, in the object mode I can now go up to Image, UV Snapshot. This is going to allow me to create a ping alpha channel file for Photoshop with transparency other than that white line that I'm seeing. I'll browse to my source images. I'll name it door skin. I'll hit save. And then I'm going to make sure that my aspect ratio is set to 1024 by 1024 and that the image format is a PNG. I'm going to click on apply. Now we've created the UV map and we're going to go into Photoshop to create the texture that will fit on our geometry once we have completed it. I've opened up my door skin ping inside of Photoshop and I can see my UV outline in which I need to put my door texture. The UV outline is a bit faint, so I'm going to make it a little bit more prominent. And I'm going to do so by making a selection of the path, that UV path, and then increasing the selection size and filling it with a more prominent color. I'm going to hold down the Command key, and the layer window, I'm going to click directly on the thumbnail. And when I do so, it makes a selection of that line. I'm now going to go to Select, Modify, Expand. I've set it for 1 pixel. I'm going to click OK. I'm going to go to my swatches. I'm going to pick a color that is quite different than I would have chosen for the color of the door. I'm going to pick a bright green. I'm going to fill that selection by holding down the Option key and hitting the Delete key. And then once I deselect, I have a green line. I'm now going to take the image that I acquired from the internet and I'm going to copy and paste the door into my door skin ping. I'm going to hit W on the keyboard and with my magic wand tool I'll click on the white background. I'm going to go to Select, Inverse, and then I'm going to choose Command C, go to door skin, and then hit Command V. I'm going to scale it up to fit within the green line, and I'm going to hit Return, and in my layer window I'm going to change the order so that the UV map is on top. I'm going to zoom in on it to make sure I've fitted this properly, and I'm going to save it as a PSD. I'm going to turn off the UV map so that all I see is the wooden door. I'm now going to return to Maya. And in Maya, I'm going to select the door surface, right-click and choose Material Attribute. I'm going to go to the Material Attribute, and I'm going to right-click on the word Color, and I'm going to choose Break Connection. I'm now going to go back out through the checkerboard pattern at the end of the color term under Bias, and this time I'm going to choose File, a little blue icon with 2 little mountain ranges and a sun. I'm going to click on the yellow folder that appears on the right in the channels box, and I'm going to get my skin and I'm going to click on Open, and there's my door. Now if I needed to fine-tune this in any way, I could go to the UV editor, and with the door selected, now I can see the door itself. I could right-click and choose Shell, and if I select that shell and get my scale tool, I can now change the position, scale, and angle of my texture on my geometry. This technique could be used to put the floor pattern on, the wall pattern, and any other plane or surface that falls on the X, Y, or Z axes.